Hello and welcome along to the third and final part of this FM21 experiment from Wales with me, Daniel. We're back today 30 years in the future as promised to find out what's been going on in Welsh football for the last 10 years. So firstly, before we talk about any of it and give you any spoilers, if you've missed either of the first two episodes, please do click back in the eye above. I've turned it into a playlist now so you can watch all three in succession. A massive thank you for everyone who has supported this and fed back on it so far. It does help out and it does make this better for the future. And fingers crossed after a little break from this one, we can have another experiment moving forward. So as we've mentioned before, the plan is that we're going to try and test a different attribute in the background each time. So this time it was finances with a sugar daddy. Next time we're going to do the same but with reputation of the teams. But for now, in part 3 today, we're back to see what's happened this time. And probably more than ever, this is going to be a big surprise to us. Because we sort of thought in the second episode that yes, Colwyn Bay were doing well. Yes, some of the sides were reaching the Europa Conference regularly, particularly Colwyn Bay. But also, the money was starting to run out, the facilities weren't getting improved anymore, and we wondered if Welsh football was going to dip again. Now, I genuinely haven't looked at this. I have no idea what it's going to be. So if you're looking forward to finding out as much as me, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for regular content. But let's go and have a look at the Welsh Premier League and see what's been happening. Are Colwyn Bay going to be the champions? That is the first question. They are, and although they have been dominant, they've won 5 of the last 8 again. It looks like Airbus have made it a big 2. So what we've got to do is see if Airbus have got quality as well and if they've been able to improve. Because look at the competition reputation. Forget about what else is going on. That is the big news here. The Welsh Premier League competition rep is 32nd in Europe. That's a big step. That's 2.5 star and it's right near the top of that as well. The Welsh Premier League is improving quickly. And now it's becoming an established league. To put it into perspective, that's above League One, that's above the Scottish Championship, that's above the league in Croatia, in Serbia, the second tier in Portugal. There's some massive ones that are dropping behind now. And it's almost caught up with some of the big ones, the Spanish second tier. The Irish Premiership's flying as well. Maybe we've inadvertently helped that league, we'll wait and find out. But that is massive. We'll get back to the coefficients later. But Colwyn Bay and Airbus UK look like the big 2. And again, they're the top 2 in the league this season. So let's have a look at some of these key players here, because the top scorer in the league by a mile is a Colwyn Bay striker. Professional personality, League 1 standard, looks very good. The Llanelli striker, because they're a bit more of a mid-table club, is still very decent. And the other Colwyn Bay one is very good as well. 2 Irishmen there too. Let's have a look at the players with the best average rating, because there's a new player there, Oduku. He is a winger who is very good and Nigerian. A Nigerian international at Colwyn Bay. He looks a really good player. He's been playing in the EFL. So they have definitely got a better standard of player than 10 years ago. I mean, look at Anton Patterson there. An under-19 international for Scotland. Been at Millwall, Dundee United. So this is a very different level. Colwyn Bay are taking things up. But there's a couple of Airbus players there as well. I'm just going past the goalkeeper. A very good English keeper from TNS to Colwyn Bay there. So actually, I'd argue Welsh football on the pitch is in a healthier position. Although, if we look at some of the other teams, Airbus, no, he's a pretty good Senegalese midfielder. And the other one's a very good winger, played 150 times for Mansfield. So Airbus have got good quality as well. I'm just looking at some of the other clubs, because Bangor City there, Connors Quay, they're not quite the same standard. So is it that there's 2 very good teams, or 3 maybe looking at Barla's points total, and then a lot of others hanging behind? Because the Barla keeper looks decent, the Airbus keeper is very good, but even there, I'd argue there's a difference in standard between the top 2 and the rest of the league. But overall, it's very much improved, and we're happy to see that. So let's have a quick look at the transfers. That's one of the first things we always do. What is the biggest fee paid this season? It is about 300 grand as well, so it's very similar. But Colwyn Bay signing both domestically. They've signed a good player from Barrytown United, who's very good actually, and they've signed a player from Blackpool for relatively big money. So they're not just buying out of this country. You can see Airbus, maybe this year's trouble is the fact they've lost one of their best players to Hull. Ross Lovell, he's very good. I'm really impressed by the standard of this league here. And you can still see, although there's not many big transfers, the likes of Connors Quay are signing a player from Gillingham for 10,000, who's decent enough. TNS are signing players from Fleetwood and from Notts County, who are still of a decent standard. So the league's certainly stronger. It's just the fact that Colwyn Bay are obliterating the opposition. Let's go through the previous years. We've got a big one. Colwyn Bay, one, have sold a player to the Middle East and also have signed someone from Wickham for $575,000. Math Brakanga, good centre-half, Welsh player, under-19 international of the past. I tell you what, this is an improvement. I expected the Welsh League to maybe go like that. And I could be proven wrong when we look at the European stuff, when we look at the facilities, when we look at the professional status. But for now, I'm very pleasantly surprised by this. Let's keep going back. 350 grand the previous year, although that's one going out from Colwyn Bay. If we look at the years before that, I mean, it is all Colwyn Bay at the top, to be fair. They sold 3 big players in 2046, but they signed a big one as well. 425 grand from Rotherham, and he's still there. They signed him for 425, and he's worth $1 million. Now, that's the one thing we've not been able to do with Bangor in our Builder Nation, is build the values of the players in the nation. And they've been able to do it, so fair play to them. Maybe this is a sign of what we can achieve with Bangor City. Let's keep going back. 1.9 million Colwyn Bay sold a player for. To Derby County. I mean, he's not even their best player. That's stunning. They've got £2 million for a player in a reputation league that's a little bit lower. You see our players at Bangor City are still worth 10, 20, 30 grand. This is a massive, massive step up. I'm so impressed. If we keep going back, 450 grand Colwyn Bay the year before. Another player that was really good. They seem to have sold him on since. If we keep going back again, 475. Airbus sold a player to Mainz in the Bundesliga. What on earth's happening in his save? I thought it was going to drop like a stone. And it is flying. Absolutely flying. I'm so impressed. The year before, Colwyn Bay, a domestic transfer. So this might be why Airbus are improving. I mean, he's not the best player now, he's 32. But Colwyn signed a player from Airbus for 625 grand. And surely that allows them to improve massively. And maybe that's what's led to their bigger transfers later. Although the year before, Airbus spent 350 grand themselves on a player from Ebbsfleet, who's still there, is still a very decent player. And the first year, after our last episode, it was big sales. Look at Bangor City. Players going to Fenerbahce and to Wrexham. Bala selling a player to Yeovil. So I think aside from the top two, they've probably not been able to keep hold of their big players so much. But still, I am blown away by that. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near the standard it was. Having said that, we've seen the transfer market's good. We've seen the Welsh reputation is good. But what is it going to be like for the clubs? How have they done in Europe? Let's start with our champions, Colwyn Bay. So professional status, 2.5 star reputation, secure finances. Excellent. Let's look at the standard of the manager. We've already seen some of the star players. They've got a very good manager as well. 3-star reputation for him. Their best youth player is pretty good too. So it would suggest, although they've signed him from another club, that Welsh teams are bringing through players still. So let's have a look at the players at the club. They've got loads worth £1 million. And not just loan stars as well. We're talking 2 permanent players worth $1 million. A loan player worth nearly $2 million. It's really promising this. A lot of Welsh players, but also a few dotted around from other areas, both in the UK and in Europe too. And let's see how they've been getting on in Europe. This year, Europa Conference group stages. They got to the knockouts. They lost to Shakhtar 1-0 on aggregate. But Colwyn Bay got out of the Europa Conference group stage this year. And that was a group with AIK, with Beveren and with Heronvane. So that's an incredible effort. They won the SPFL Trust Trophy as well, beating Gillingham, Larne and Aberdeen reserves. If we go back to the previous year, Europa League group stages. And what happened after that? They went straight out, but they got a draw against Lens of France. They got a win against Beveren from Belgium. Lost both games to Lazio. But they picked up some points. They're doing well. The year before that, unfortunately, they went out a bit earlier on. The prior year, they got through to the group stages again, this time the Europa Conference. They got through them to the first knockout round and lost to Bilbao, but only lost 3-2 at home. The year before that, out in the playoff, unfortunately. But that was a year they didn't win the league, and they still got all the way to the playoff. So that's a pretty good effort in itself. Before that, we've got Europa League group stages. Brest, Liverpool and Tyrrell. They got 1 point out of those games, but still got to the groups. The year before that, they didn't win the league. So basically, whenever they've won the league, they've got into the group stages. What we need now is Airbus to have done the same. That's where it's going to be telling. So Europa Conference group stages there. Did they get through them? They did. They lost in the first knockout to Austria Vienna. The year before that, Europa Conference group stages. Did they get through them? They didn't on that occasion. So there is actually a remarkable improvement. There's a big difference between where they were 10 years ago here, where they were knocked out in the first qualifying round, to where they are now, which is an established European team. That's got to have helped the coefficient, because they've reached the knockout some years. Let's go and have a look at the runners-up instead via the facility screen, because Colwyn Bay, they've actually managed to keep their training facilities good, so there's actually improvements there. Good facilities, average recruitment and coaching, and still the old little stadium, so they must be playing their European game somewhere else. Is it going to be the racecourse again? Let's just have a quick look. It is. They're playing out of the racecourse, so it seems to be the go-to. They won that game in the Europa Conference group stages against AIK with 9 men. That's an unbelievable effort. Let's go back to Airbus UK. Have they competed? Have they challenged? They're professional. They're 2-star ability. The finance is still okay. The player's worth £500,000. It's not bad. The wage is a little bit lower, but still a few in the thousands. I didn't show you Colwyn Bay's, did I? Let's have a quick look at theirs. A lot of players on £3-4 grand a week. It's a big wage bill. But Airbus UK, good to see that they're still improving reputation as well. Suggests they might have done well in Europe. Facilities, good youth facilities, average training facilities, adequate recruitment. So again, a slight improvement. It's just whether that continues across the league. Let's have a look at how they've done in European football. So they went out in a playoff of the Europa Conference this year. The season before that, 3rd qualifier. I'm more worried about these years where they've won the league and they've gone in as champions. And that time they got through to the Europa Conference group stages. Drew with Hajduk Split and won against Hajduk away from home, picked up 4 points. So actually, we're starting to see 2 or 3 teams that can push on and get into the group stages. Whoever wins the league is getting through, because look at the last time they won the league before that. Europa Conference group stages. 2 draws in their first 2 games, and then a draw later on as well. So actually, we're starting to see 2 very good sides in Welsh football. And I didn't expect them to be Colwyn Bay and Airbus. I've got to be honest about that. The year before that, when they won the league, they got through to the Europa Conference group stages. It is sustained. We are so pleased to see this. I really thought it was going to go the other way. I can't lie to you here. The years before that, though, when they have been in Europe as a sort of lower qualifier, they've not managed to do it. Having said that, the first year after we left it, when they'd won the league at the expense of Colwyn Bay, they got through to the Europa Conference group stages again. They got 1 draw in the group stages. So actually, I'm starting to think that Welsh football is going to go to the top. Fair play, this isn't the finish I was expecting. Let's go and have a look at the rest of the league, because there've got to have been some other clubs who have been competing. There's a big points total difference between Barlett and the rest, so let's have a look at them. They are still professional, still okay finances, 1.5-star ability. Their key player's a Frenchman, who is of a pretty decent standard and is a permanent addition. He's played in the Welsh League for a while, but came through at Kettering and Luton Town. Let's have a quick look at their facilities. Not great, but still adequate and average across the board. They're still keeping hold of it. The senior squad, the values aren't quite the same. So I think the European ones stand out. But let's just see if they've done anything in Europe as well. I'm guessing if Airbus and Colwyn haven't made it when they've not been champions, that none of these other sides will. So just going back through the 10 years here, there's 1 year they reached the 3rd qualifier. But aside from that, it's been pretty underwhelming. And they didn't even get into Europe the first 4 years. So I'm quite intrigued to see how the Welsh League is playing out. Let's go and have a quick look at the average attendances for the league and the average wage bills, just to see if there's any standouts. So the average attendance is still Bangor City on top. They're averaging 1,500. They've got a great following in the nation. Colwyn Bay's is over 1,000. TNS still almost there. So maybe we'll go and look at those 2 sides who expected to be the ones to run away with it. The annual salary, I mean, over 2 million for Colwyn, about 1 million for Airbus and TNS. So TNS have still got a big wage bill. It just seems like they're underachieving. So let's very quickly have a look at those 2 sides. I just want to see the stadiums if there's anything else that stands out there. There's not. So all of the clubs in the top tier at the moment, still the ones with original stadiums, or with small stadiums like the new Bangor one. So the 2 sides that got the big investment in terms of stadium, who we didn't even give money to at the start, Cambrian and Clydach and Monmouth, both of those not in the top tier. So the stadium is not a good way to invest. But let's have a very quick look at TNS and Bangor City, just for some hope. Because TNS had a few years there where they finished 2nd. So hopefully that means they'll have done something special and maybe had some success in Europe. Their key player's okay. Let's see what's gone on. Okay, so I've gone back 2 years and they have got all the way through, not even from winning the league. They've gone through the Europa Conference qualifiers from start to finish. They've got to the group stages. They've won their first home match. They won their second home match. They've picked up 7 points there. That's helpful to the coefficient from a runner-up. The year before that second qualifier, I think that will probably be a one-off, will it? They got to the playoff in 2042. But still, that 1 year will make a difference. To have someone backing up the champions, to have had 2 sides in the group stages would have been a massive difference. Let's have a look at Bangor City as well. They're the final ones we're going to focus on here. Only 1 year actually in second. The rest of them, they've been third or below. So let's see if they've had any good seasons. Their key player is Jamie Grayson, who at 28 is a very good striker. They should be further up the league with him, surely. Let's have a look at their European performance. I don't think we're going to get many more group stages, are we? None for Bangor City by the looks of it. Disappointment on their front. And Llanelli Town, the only other side to make it this season. So hopefully they'll be able to do well. But it's the highest they've finished in 10 years. Their key player, still a pretty average one in truth. So not quite the same standards as the rest of the sides. Let's very quickly move on to the second tier. See who's been winning in that one. Because it looks like the sides who have got the money are still at the top. One of you asked in the comments about Monmouth, who got that big stadium last time. But look at them, they're professional. They're still only half a star personality, insecure finances. Been out of the league for years, and they've gone straight back down again there. That's interesting, to be honest. I'm quite surprised by that. Are there any big transfer fees there? Not at all. What are the stadiums like? There is still Monmouth's one. It's the standout. But they're a yo-yo club between the second and third tier. It doesn't really make sense. If we have a look at the detailed team stats, the average attendances are still low. The salaries are still pretty low. Monmouth's is the 4th highest and they've got relegated. So with the professional standing, they've got to be one of the few at this level that are. It's still not working out for them. Carmarthen are professional again. 10 years ago they weren't. So that's a positive. Kefan Druids are professional. Carnarvon are professional. So actually I'd say Welsh football's still getting better. It had a little lull, but it's improving again. If we look at the south, Pennybont are definitely the top spenders there. Cambrian and Clydac second, so they're still in that second tier. If we have a look at the average attendances, Cambrian and Clydac above 500 now. It was 367 10 years ago. But they're still the only ones with that big stadium, apart from Cambrian Town. 8,500 seater. That's Rodney Parade. They're sharing with Newport County, are they? They are. So not their own stadium, but sharing with one of the professional teams in the English Pyramid. Very interesting. Let's have a look at the league itself. I presume Pennybont are champions, Cambrian and Clydac up there. But interesting to see nonetheless. And actually, the North and South are rated about where the Welsh League was at the start. So everything is improving slightly. Any big transfers down there? Not at all. So I'm intrigued. Should we just go quickly back to the top tier? I just want to see if all the sides are still professional. So Connors Quay, professional. Llanelli, pro. TNS are pro. We'd expect Bangor City to be. What about Barry? They are. They've had a few decent years. So they might have a little European run here or there. Swansea Uni. The Uni sides are still amateur. But 1.5 star reputation for Swansea. 1 star for Cardiff. Aberystwyth relegated but professional. And Llandudno 1.5 star. They've had a couple of big years. So should we have a look at them for Europe as well? But they've not made it past the qualifiers at any stage. Having said that, still look a good club off the pitch. Let's go ahead though and look at the European coefficient, because that's one of the things we're always very interested in. How has all of this stuff translated off the pitch in terms of Europe, in terms of the development of Wales? Well, no sign of Wales winning the European Championship, but let's have a look at the nation club coefficients. So Wales up to 26th, having some better years. So it's in that stage where they've got teams in a second qualifier for the Europa Conference, I think. It is. So they're not a million miles away from getting up to that sort of top 20 range. But they probably need a bit more consistency from the side that aren't champions. And that's what they're probably missing at the moment. If we look at the club coefficients, let's get the Welsh sides up here and see how they're coping. So, Colwyn Bay are the big ones, aren't they? They are 130th. They got 9 points in the coefficient this year. That's going to make a massive difference. So the year after next, they should have a big coefficient. And they're losing their bad years. If they can get to the knockouts next season, could be a big one for them. Airbus on 12, they're not doing badly either. They've been quite consistent, but they had 1 year without Europe at all, and their best year is going to drop off in a couple. All the rest are really struggling. TNS had 1 great year, which we saw. Bala had one decent year that's about to drop off, and the rest all sort of standing still. So we're reliant on a few sides dominating. But again, TNS haven't qualified for Europe this year, so they're going to drop away. It'll be 3 years in a row. And that's the thing, it's the consistency of the same teams making it. And bar the two that are at the top there, Colwyn Bay and Airbus, that hasn't happened. Let's have a look at the 10-year one for revenue, because that's just as important for the Welsh League. So, Colwyn Bay nearly in the top 100 there. Airbus nearly in the top 200, TNS not a long way behind. So positive signs on that front, and it's only going to get better as the bad years drop off for the first two. For TNS, might be a little bit trickier. Now, something's really interesting me here. I've gone to the financial status of the playable leagues, which is basically the UK. And there's some Welsh teams near the top. But none of them, not one of these teams, are the teams we gave money to at the start. Undy. And none of them are top tier sides either. The highest are Connors Quay of the professional teams and Newtown. But the top four, Undy, who are in the second tier, in the south, really struggling. But why have they got good finances? Where is that money coming from? Are the owners changing clubs? Have the ones we put in at the start attracted more money to Welsh football? I don't know. The facilities are still poor. Maybe it's just that they're getting odd bits of money and not investing. Have the broadcast deals gone up for the league? We might have to look at that as well. But the top four sides, all ones that we haven't invested in. And all ones that are still semi-pro, interestingly. So not sure what's causing that, but really interesting to see nonetheless. They've got more finance security than Celtic and Hibernian. It's insane. Swansea from England. Absolutely bizarre. Although Hereford are 14th in England as well, so let's not get too excited, because they're bottom of League 2. I don't know what's going on there. So a very interesting state Welsh football's in. Let's go and have a look at Wales, the national team, for how they're getting on. So they're ranked 15th in the world now. The leagues are moving up in quality, as are the players. Jack Owen is the star. He's at Real Madrid and is a world-class centre-half. Adam Williams at Tottenham is a world-class centre-mid. Simon Box at Arsenal is a world-class centre-mid. And to be fair, they've regenerated another squad of players. And looking at the age of these, between sort of 29 and 32, are we suggesting that this is largely the team that won that Euros under-21s in 2040 or 2039? Because perhaps it is, because they're all around the same age. They're all in their peak. So have they managed to achieve anything special? They've got the World Cup this summer. What have they done in previous times? They got to the semi-final of the Euros. They got to the third round of the World Cup. But going back, that's just about the limit of it for the last 12 years. What have the under-21s been doing? Because is there any promise for the future after what's happened in the previous 10 years? I can't see that bar qualifying, there's actually anything from the European Championships other than group stage matches. So there we go. 2045, they reached the final again. So perhaps it's a lull to move forward then, because at the moment, Wales are producing consistently good teams. And they're one of those very good European sides, expected to reach tournaments and expected to get quite far in them. And you can certainly see why looking at the team. Going by the senior squad, there's nobody based in the Welsh League there. What about the under-21s? If there's a few here, we'll see it as a success. There's not. What about the 20s? Llanelli Town, Martin Griffiths, good young striker. So there are still a few about that are in the Welsh League that are staying on that little bit longer. The under-19s is normally a big one. There's one from Bangor City there, who's not great, to be honest. There's one from Keffin Druids, who looks a little bit better. One from Connors Quay, who looks quite good as a young winger. So there's a few in the Welsh League there. And what about the 18s? Lots of players from the Welsh League there, including one from Connors Quay, our champions. So I'm actually saying I'm quite pleasantly surprised by this, because I really thought it was going to be of a lower standard. I thought the money had dried up, the facilities would go. But it seems like the Welsh League has managed to finance itself a bit. And to have two sides in Europe in the same season at the group stages is something that makes a difference to the competition reputation. And you can see it was working its way up there. It really is a surprising end to this series, because I thought we'd be talking about it going the other way this time, but it hasn't done that at all. So let me know what you think down in the comments, of course. An interesting experiment I found it to be. I've always said I wanted to do niche experiments, one where I didn't know what the answer would be. Not just let's give these teams £1 billion and see how quickly they rise. There's no fun in that for me. But to see the ebbs and flows in the Welsh League, the gradual progression, where the money was spent initially, on the facilities, on going professional, and where it's been spent later on transfers, on wages, and on improving those teams in Europe, it's really surprised me. I've not expected it to work that way round. Not many clubs threw away their money, and a few of them have gone backwards, as well as surprise leaders in the Welsh Premier League. So let me know what you thought, anything that stood out to you. If you did enjoy the series and this episode, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for daily FM21 content. We will have a few more specials on Sunday lunchtime moving forward, and another Welsh-based experiment a little bit later in the year, where we try it with a different attribute, possibly reputation. You can find all the links to the playlist in the eye above for the regular series and for the Twitch channel in the description down below. But a massive thank you for watching, your support as always, and I'll see you next time.